Kerry, you're in an airport.
That's why you hear people telling me that it's time to get on a plane, but it's not my plane.
All right. Thank goodness. Time to get on with No Vacancy Live, though.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. Hey everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live. It is April 27, 2021. That's Anthony Melcuri from Austin, Texas. I'm Glenn Hausman in New York City, but wishing I was somewhere else. Anthony, so great to see you. How are you, my friend?
I just realized that when somebody announces Angelina, please come to the gate, the next thing you want to hear is Angelina Jolie. Right. So, this woman's name has been basically kidnapped for the rest of her life. When people hear Angelina, they're going to say Jolie. Are you hearing a lot of noise in the background?
Yes, but it's not too bad. And I know that when you're not speaking, you're gonna hit that mute button. But right now, we're having great interactive conversations. Hey, everybody! Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say. So I'm in Austin. I think I walked through Austin once, like a long time ago. I went through. But I don't remember. So I was able to go to Terry Black's barbecue.
Yeah, baby.
And I was able to go to the Vulcan Gaslight House Comedy Club, where Joe Rogan was performing. Yep. And I felt like I had a little vacation yesterday. It was nice. I did my speaking gig in the morning, and then went to see Joe Rogan, and had another 2 days in a row at Terry Black. You know, I'm not a big believer. Like when people say go to Cat's Deli, like I mean it. Go to Cat's Deli. It's really good.
Yep.
But sometimes when people overhype a place, like everybody's overhyped Terry Black, go to Terry Black's, Joe Rogan says it, everybody says it. I went. It was not only great that it was great barbecue, but it was like authentic. Like it just looked. It didn't look modernized. They do everything the old-fashioned way. It was really good.
I love that. And you got to get to yours. Now, listen, we're supposed to have on Matt Barba and Johnathan Capps from Charlestowne Hotel today, but I'm saying screw them. We're going to talk barbecue for the rest of the show. Just kidding, guys. We'll get to you in a minute.
Well, since they're in the green room, you insulted our guests. I think they're probably not going to.
It's all right. I can see them. They're still smiling because they know I'm kidding. Tongue firmly planted in cheek. But speaking of that, Anthony, what did you have at the barbecue restaurant? Obviously, Austin, we're talking we're talking brisket, but you had more than just that.
No, I had the brisket, and then I had the thick cut brisket, which was delicious. Then the next day, I had the chopped brisket, which wasn't as good, to be honest with you. It wasn't as much fun because I like seeing them cut the thick cut brisket, and it seems like it comes right out of the oven. So I like that a lot more. But then the sides were good. But the service was really nice. And I like the fact that the guy that was cooking the brisket all the way in the back, like gave tours and like gave up the secrets of how to smoke it and what kind of wood they use. And it was just, and they really were very efficient. The lines were very long, but I waited no more than 10 minutes.
Wow. Well, that seems worth it. All right, I think I'm gonna have to smoke myself some ribs over here at the Hausman Resort Pool Club Smokehouse this weekend. All right, let's get into it. What do you say, Anthony? Should we bring on our guest for today? All right, welcoming to the show, Matt Barba, COO of Charlestowne Hotels, and returning to the show very triumphantly, Johnathan Capps, Chief Revenue Officer, again with Charlestowne Hotels. Gentlemen, so great to see you.
Thank you for having us. Although we're in the Carolinas, so we can talk barbecue too.
Yeah,
so.
that was going to be my first question. We're talking beef barbecue. You're in the Carolinas. You focus squarely on pork. Matt, what's your favorite barbecue place and why?
Sweet and Swine. It's adjacent to my house. I can walk there. They've got phenomenal. And, to Anthony's point about service, they've got great service. But, of course, it's noon for us. And now talking all this food, restricted brisket, I'm now starving. So if you hear my stomach rumbling through this.
Yep. Johnathan, how about you before we get into the real meat of the show?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about a vibe. So, or I could go a classic barbecue place. I like a place called Home Team Barbecue here. Just a good mix of cocktails. And to Anthony's point, service, and it's got a vibe to it. It's off the beach. You can walk to it from the beach, and you can get a drink and get a barbecue sandwich.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yesterday when I was talking to the people there, my head's like this as I'm talking to them, going, "How are you so nice?" Like they were like, I was just like, you're not like service nice. You're like, I'm in your grandmother's kitchen nice. Like you're like, Like just like you have nothing else to do and you have nobody else to wait on, and you just want to hang out with me. Like it was like really just that kind of service. It was great.
So they didn't have one of the signs up that say like, "Please be patient," like, you know, we're there. That's good.
That's what I was going to say.
No, it was just very efficient. It was like I told Glenn before, it's like Disney efficient, like everything just moves really fast.
Right.
But it feels just like two guys opened up a side road barbecue, and the guy in the back, their cousin, is cooking the wood, but they have a multi-million-dollar business, and their souvenirs is perfect. Like while you're in line, you're looking at all the hats and the shirts, and you know, I was tempted to buy a hat, but then I was like, do I need another friggin' hat? So I didn't buy one, but I almost did because it was like so well done. Again, like Disney, you go through the lines and everything's there to buy. And you know what? It wasn't even that expensive. I mean, I think the barbecue was maybe $16.
Well, it really depends.
And the sides
the sandwiches range between $18 and $20. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was very reasonable for what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, listen, I could talk about barbecue all day, and thank goodness Daniel is joking about plant-based brisket. That does not sound like a good combination. Listen, I want to be a reductarian. I want to eat less meats, but I want vegetables to be vegetables. You don't have to hide them and pretend there's something else. But that's a rant for probably more of a Friday night audit show. Gentlemen, Charlestowne Hotels, you guys are a leading management company out there. You've been around for more than 40 years. You've got an amazing portfolio of dozens of hotels out there. We got this beautiful gem over here. A lot of high-end boutique-type properties that have been repeatedly named top hotels in the country from publications like Travel and Leisure magazine, for example. And you also have like hotels like Best Western, for example, an interesting portfolio of products, but you guys know this. That was for the benefit of the audience. Matt, let's start with you. Big picture today, how are you feeling about where Charlestowne Hotels sits as we are seeing the hospitality industry spring back to life where it wasn't and blossom even further where we had those great moments?
Yeah, you know, we are feeling really good. You know, we're coming off a great 2021. You mentioned it. It was our, you know, getting past our 40th year in business. We were able to develop and transition into 10 properties, almost growing our portfolio by 20%. And, you know, not that any of us had a crystal ball back then, but we just happened to have been in markets, and Johnathan probably can speak to this, you know, sort of statistically, that thrived in that COVID recovery, right? Like they were in markets people wanted to be. We don't have in our portfolio, you know, those big group houses or the ones that rely heavily on corporate business. We have a few, but we were able to, you know, backfill that with the leisure business. And so they were high leisure demand markets, high leisure demand properties, under 100 keys, you know, on average. And so we, you know, we fared pretty well coming out of that, really well, actually, Jonathan. And so we're excited, you know, about where things are headed now and the growth we see in the future, and sort of even just if the pipeline's a little bit of a telltale of some alternative lodging, you know, sort of sneaking in there and seems to be prevalent these days, just coming off of everyone wanting to experience something different. And so, you know, it is exciting. I know we're all, you know, sort of dealing with some adversities that I'm sure we'll get to, but
yeah, we will get to that.
Yeah,
that's where all the fun is, Matt. That's where all the fun is. Really good. So, Anthony, you know, just to share with our audience, he's talking about, you know, they're in areas like Grand Junction, Colorado, Charleston, South Carolina, Red Rocks, Colorado, Jackson, Wyoming. You know, I could go on and on. Isle of Palm, you know, Stowe, Vermont. So you're absolutely right, Matt. It's a different type of clientele that was going. It was almost like there was this great awakening that happened. Everyone all of a sudden rediscovered what they loved about travel and hospitality. So, Jonathan, how is that informing you? It's what you're thinking about these days as Chief Revenue Officer.
Yeah, you know, if a revenue person isn't having fun right now with the potentials of what we're doing, with where ADRs are going and where these markets are going, you might look elsewhere, right? It's pushing boundaries. It's taking properties to limits they've never been, and that's kind of what we've explored over the last year. You know, like you said, some of these markets where, you know, you saw demand levels that were just never there, and it was people flooding out. It was people that couldn't travel internationally to ski, and they were going to ski domestically and do other things that just, they were forced to do that within a 100-mile range maybe. And now, to your point, two things: their eyes were open to these new small towns that maybe, to our point earlier, had a good barbecue restaurant or had local, and they thought the same thing about hotels, and went after hotels that provide an experience. I think for us on the independent side too, it just allowed us, some people felt comfortable in small. They felt comfortable with our response. On the branded side, we even struggled, as you mentioned, having some brands, the response, right? How quick could we respond? And now it's to the point of people have taken those vacations and now they're seeking out others. So to Matt's point, we're rolling into a Q1 that has been amazing compared to forecast, and the summer outlook is insane.
Yeah, Anthony?
But do you think, because what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in certain markets is that there's not a slowdown, but there's a little bit of like taking a breath, because I'm hearing a lot of people I'm talking to, it's like, okay, I took this one vacation. It was kind of like my COVID out, just to get out there. But now it's like the rates are so crazy and they're not cleaning my room and there's no room service. And it just seems like it's very expensive to go on vacation now, and maybe I'm going to take a breath. And a lot of my friends, are saying, I took an Airbnb for less money with my family. So do you think it's going to be a little bit slowed down right after the summer because people are feeling the crunch now? I mean, everybody I talk to is like, I went to the grocery store, it's 40% more. I went to the gas station. It's like everybody in all economic stations in life seem to be talking about everything. I was talking about last week that I went to get something done in my house. It should have been $2,500. It was $6,000 because of the wood. And I said, I'm going to wait till next year. So are you seeing any slowdown for the September's, October's, November's, and as far as rates, and are you making any adjustments?
Yeah, it hasn't. Great point. And actually, the barometer for me was spring break. I actually watched two major things, right? It was spring break, and I thought the NCAA tournament was one that I watched. One, watched personally, but two, was kind of curious how New Orleans would bounce back as a city that just struggled so much during COVID. And both of those come back. So for us, spring break, to your point, we felt like it was a wait and see. The booking window shrunk more than it had even in 2021 on leisure stays. And we were at the point of making calls of judgment. Do we put something out there? Do we make some adjustments down? But the second later, it picked up. And it was picking up until last minute. I mean, I think even for us, I don't want to say that, like, call it the walk-in business of the world has come back, but there is mobile, there's same-day bookings. Like, even here in Charleston, I'm downtown this weekend, and there's call it same-day reservations for $900 to $1,000. And, I don't want that to be like the super norm, nor do I want to wait for a $1,000 reservation to be made on the same day. But we have seen the booking window shrunk. So I think, to your point, there has been some wait and see, but not yet where demand and supply didn't meet, and we still felt comfortable charging those rates.
Right. Wow. That's a pretty interesting philosophy. Matt, how are you seeing that in context of the operational side of the business?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the volume of business has not slowed down, and we don't, we've got some markets, we're in the Chicago market. We entered that market this last year. And so we see the corporate and compression side of things cause what that can cause. And so, that hasn't come back. We know that, but then it's now just operationally trying to keep up with it all. And yeah, you made the point earlier about Anthony, that the service needs to be there, and that the hours of operations of the different outlets need to be maintained, or that's what people are expecting for the rates that Johnathan just mentioned of upwards to $1,000. And so, right. There isn't the only slowdown is those applications coming in for people to fill those.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. I was at a hotel this weekend. This week, a beautiful hotel. They took really good care of me, but there was no room service. There was no food and beverage before 4 o'clock, and we closed at 10 o'clock. And then when I went to the mini bar, there was nothing that was local. There was no like sandwiches or food that would have been inspiring for me to bring to my room. It was all the same frozen crap that you get in most mini marts in hotels. So I think we just need to do a better job when you are going to take out those hours of operation.
Yeah, that's rough.
Sure.
Matt, please. Yeah,
there's a constant collaboration between operations, marketing, and the revenue team on our side, and making sure that we are managing the guest expectation. If we can't deliver on something, then We don't work independently of the rate that's being charged.
Yep.
We don't get wide-eyed about how many rooms can we actually fill. If we've got to dial it back, we dial it back. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the service industry. We need to provide a level of service. I'm still taken aback these days. Johnathan mentioned earlier, did you walk up to somewhere that had a sign that said "Be patient" or "We're not open today due to staffing"? Never in my wildest dreams would I've ever expected that would be something that would not only ever happen, but then become a norm, right?
Yeah.
Now people have staff.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think there are some real challenges that we're all facing, but I also think there's what can we get away with mentality. It's like, hey, can we get away with this? Like, we know we can clean a room potentially. I'm not saying we can in all hotels, but we're not going to clean them because we're saving money, or we're not going to open the hours of operation of the restaurant because it will save money. We can get away with it. People are understanding we're coming off of COVID. And I think that is way over. And like I said, even like I went to one hotel where I had the restaurant, I had room service. It was just fun. It was just like, okay, and whenever I wanted something, it was there. And I just felt more comfortable. Here I had a plan. And even when I planned, it wasn't, the food wasn't where I expected it to be. Like I said, if I go to Mini Mart and there's some really local barbecue sandwiches in the refrigerator, I would grab those. Matter of fact, I was here in the airport and there's this local roast beef and brisket place, and they had wrap sandwiches like a hero. Yep. Now, in the refrigerator. Now, why couldn't they do that in the Mini Mart? And I would have grabbed one of those. I would have grabbed a couple of those. So I just think that we're in we can get away with it stage, and we have to be careful.
So, Matt, let me flip this over to you then and kind of turn the equation. Yeah, you can get away with it. I know you guys at Charlestowne Hotels, you don't wind up the #1 hotel in the country and by Travel and Leisure by skimping on things and getting away with things. So how are you turning that reality that you're seeing out into the market to a competitive advantage through what you folks are doing at Charlestowne Hotels to win those guests to stay in your system of properties?
Yeah, I mean, no crystal ball back when we were, the properties that we're managing now were in the pipeline, but they really have set us up for success through all of this. And I think, starting with their size, they're very manageable sizes. It doesn't mean that, it's not all relevant as it relates to, or to a relative, as it relates to staffing, and you could just be down one person and it could be detrimental to a smaller property. But we recognized early on the need to stay ahead of that, right? Not become complacent and use the excuse that we modify hours of operation or things like that, because we knew the folks next door or down the street were doing that, and we wanted to be the ones that could be that sort of beacon, if you will, or a better experience, especially for a weary traveler. If you think of the reason why hotels existed early days to begin with, was for that traveler, right? And so we also reside in a lot of communities where people look to that hotel that we manage to remain familiar and be that mainstay and be that constant. And what we didn't want was for someone to walk in and be like, not you too, right? Especially if it's somebody that's staying with us with some frequency. So it just became being really smart and clever about how we manage it, how we communicated it, and where we added value elsewhere if we did have to modify something in that moment. But we on a daily basis reassess it and don't let weeks go by if it's not necessary, right? I mean, just anecdotally, we had one property that had called earlier through COVID recovery, where it's like, we're gonna have to close the restaurant this weekend. I was like, well, let's talk for your staffing. And it sounded like just a regular short staffed night from 2018. And it's like, we would have never closed in 2018. Do not close that restaurant.
Right. Great. I love that. It's funny, Bob, Anthony, I'll let you speak in a sec, but your friend Bob is saying, to Anthony's point, it's funny. Anything that loses money in a hotel is still closed due to COVID. Anything making money is open by following local and CDC guidance. I just thought that was funny to point out. Anthony, you wanted to say something?
It's interesting. He does a lot of traveling, probably more than us. So to kind of change gears a little bit, your business model is very competitive, hyper competitive. And when you come to the table, you're really having to, compete with a lot of different management companies. So one, what are you doing to compete? And number two, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. You guys, I'm not going to come out and ask you, are you guys looking to be acquired, or are you going to be acquired? But I'll come out and ask you, are you going to be acquired, or are you looking to merge?
No, I mean, I'll jump in and Matt can jump in. Yeah, it's not our thing. Our we're going to stay in our lane here of what's been built and where we think, this fits for us, and especially where it seems the traveler is going. And what we talked about a minute ago is that, there's a right size and growth's been good for us. That may tip out at the 70 property mark. We have scaled up. I mean, we added 20 corporate positions in the last year, and that was to continue to provide scale. So our size and our relationship with our owner is that there's not levels of bureaucracy, and that there is a connection to the C-suite and a connection to the revenue team, and that we can service that to the independent level. I looked at it and was thinking about it a lot, and like in the sense of we are servicing 55, 60 properties one-on-one. So Charlestowne itself not being a stock, right? We are a company. We're out chasing a profit as the others, but there's 55 individual stocks we're trying to pump up here with all individual owners, and we still maintain that, right? We still have meetings with these ownership levels. We're still able to connect to the properties, and we still know that it takes being an independent in Charleston and being an independent in South Florida. Those look different, and we want to be able to manage those differently. And we know that there's a size where that stops and we become something different. We just think that essence of who we are can maintain, call it for 15 to 20 more properties.
Right.
Yeah. We approach third-party management like we do our independent hotels, and that we hyper curate the experience for the owner even, and how we manage, all of those. It's the same as we do with our owners and their assets. They're all vastly unique. And so that approach doesn't always scale beyond a certain point. And so we're happy with, keeping it under a certain threshold in order to continue to be able to do that, and not to have to over standardize things and become a one size fits all model.
Right.
That's not for us.
No, it certainly isn't. Anthony, you got a question?
No, I was just going to say, when things are good like they are right now in those areas, these guys are the smartest people in the world. As soon as there's a downturn, everybody thinks they're not as smart, and it's good to be in a position right now where things are running on all cylinders. But recession, it seems like that's the word in the air now. Inflation is the word in the air. So preparing for the next wave, especially when you're not, we're having labor issues. You're not to get in the whole labor thing, because that's what we talk about way too much on the show. But the labor issues in your area, in your market, are they as challenging in other markets? Or you guys are in better shape because maybe you're able to pay more because it's busier? What is it like?
And I'd like to ask, how are you recruiting people as well, please, on top of that?
Yeah, sure. It is pretty similar across all of the markets. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's little things here and there where we see it softening a little bit, but then it stalls again, right? And so I don't think that anyone isn't in the same boat. Yes, I do think that given the success of the genetic makeup of the portfolio that we have and where they reside, that they're doing better, and so we can keep up with having to do wage increases as necessary to be competitive within the market or above, since we expect more of the employees that are delivering a level of service that our product level delivers. And so it is very similar though across, and no, we're not at anywhere being fully at full capacity from a staffing standpoint. And so I think everyone is playing the same game, and I think that depending on the generation that's listening, that they think that we're missing the point, right? So when everyone came out the gate with signing bonuses and this and advertising $18 an hour at local McDonald's or whatever, now all of a sudden that hotel down the street's got to pay their housekeeper $20, and it was just this. It just kept going, and I don't know how sustainable it is, right? And you don't really have anyone out at the forefront within our industry to stake a claim, right? So if you use the example of like in another industry, Bank of America, right? I think they had come out and said that by 2025, maybe they were going to raise their minimum wage to $25 an hour.
Right.
Well, some of the branded, flagged organizations can't say that, right? Because they could put their owners out of business, their roadside motel, or just depending on what their product level is. So we are in a better position to be able to independently work differently than that and be able to evaluate what's happening in the market and stay above it. And then it really, for us, becomes about retention. We're very heavy into the retention game, because I know I just sort of mentioned the generational gaps, and it's a real thing, and it's a big thing, and it's causing a lot of what I think everyone's suffering through right now is the different generations. And so long before the pandemic, we had those generational gaps, but they were reversed, right? You had a younger manager. I was one of them, right? I'm a 28-year-old front office supervisor, manager, whatever, elevating in my career. And I'm managing the 40, 50, 60-year-old person who, let's call them a baby boomer right now. They took lifetime jobs, they're concerned about savings and stability. They're long-term thinkers. Well, now, and so they stuck it out, right? So whether there's contentious relationship or not, they stuck it out. And now it's reversed. And so you've got veteran managers managing, Gen Z.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily know how to do it, because we all keep fighting to come back to center. Like, why can't they think like we do?
That's so funny. I see this with every generation. I'm old enough to remember when everyone was bashing millennials for not wanting to do anything. And I even remember when I was first coming into the business, they were like, Gen Xers won't do things the way they want us to do, the way that we do things. Yeah. So interesting. Go on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think so that.
Well, I just think
Anthony, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that we've had.
No, I was just thinking that it's so much easier to find.
No, it's a connection issue. All right, he shut himself off. So, Matt, please continue, and then we'll go to Anthony.
Okay. And so what I was just going to say that, so we've had to re-educate our workforce.
Right.
This is your workforce, right? And so you do have a generation, we'll call it Gen Z, that they grew up with gig work, or they're still trying to figure out who they are. They're short-term thinkers, barely meeting their monthly obligations to some extent. And so things like 401k are of no interest to them, right? Their employment length might be 2 years, or really not thinking that far ahead.
Right.
Legacy benefits like short-term and long-term disability, they don't even know what that is, right? And so what do they care about is what we are all trying to figure out, right? And so keeping in mind that we're a 24-hour guest-facing, that nature of our business, it's difficult for us to offer perks at an office job. Right. And so, but we have to figure out what our version of those things are. And so some of those are flex hours, giving some autonomy with scheduling, right? Providing a sense of ownership. So if you're a business that can offer profit sharing, you should consider that. And then,
there's another management company that's doing that. Yeah.
And then there is, again, from that generation's perspective, the frequency in which you provide feedback or even pay increases. I think gone are the days of the annual performance review. They need the feedback by the minute to calm their anxiety, right? They are so used to being on social media and like, how many likes did I get? How many likes did I get? And they get it by the second. And so then they're left wondering in the workplace, how am I doing, right? But they're not as equipped socially to just ask, or, and so they end up leaving or not staying. And so for us, it is figuring out how to attract, meet them where they are.
Right.
Anxiety.
Anthony, do you want to say something?
I can't get over how accurate, because we talk to people every day. I was yesterday at a company doing a keynote and talking to people all day, and you are so wired in. I can tell you that you're on the ground kind of guy, because everything you just said is so accurate and so real. But it's not only, and what we try to say here is, it's not the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen B, whatever you want to call them. It's everybody. I asked everybody in the audience yesterday, there's maybe 1,000 people in the audience, and I asked everybody, how many people want these things? Everybody raised their hand. It wasn't a 20-year-old, 25-year-old. It was everybody wants those things. They want flexibility. They want to be treated like an adult. As far as the feedback, I think that's what's kind of impressed me the most. Is that's what we're finding. What I'm finding is that they want feedback constantly, and they want increases, more than once a year. And the problem we're fighting against, and that's kind of how we, as maybe older, more mature managers, is we have to express that Lamborghini you're seeing that you think this guy can afford, he's actually leasing that, and the company that is, because he has a million likes, is renting it for him. So this is not real. What's real is you're building your brand. I asked everybody in the audience, how many people have a brand? 2 people raised their hand. You're building your brand. Your brand is more valuable than a Lamborghini. Your brand is more valuable than an increase. your brand is more valuable than anything, because that's how you get paid, not only in your company, but when you go for another job. And it's so easy. I'm competing against helicopters, planes,
Yeah.
and it's so easy to find a job today by just going on Indeed or one of these other platforms. You find it instantly, and
Right.
real jobs.
Right. Before you answer or comment on that, let me complicate things a little bit more. And I really appreciate you guys having such an open conversation with us. Kyle is saying, hey, major studies say the average company is giving 1 to 5% pay increases, but switching jobs, they could get 15, 20%. Plus 70% of hospitality people switched jobs last year. Now, I can't speak to the efficacy of those numbers, though it sounds right. But what can we do when they're being encouraged to go in other places? And Matt, you got to that a little bit. But what are some of the more forward-thinking things that we could really start to address? Is there any more experiences we could give them? Pathways to success? What is the full picture of their career? That sort of stuff, maybe?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, like I said, I think that there's meeting them where they are relative to their expectations, regardless of their age or maturity, and so depending on what it is just trying anything at this point, right? And experimenting. We have to experiment, and there's never been a time where that can be more forgiving, is in the experimentation that's happening now. But it does cause a little chaos, right? I mean, it causes a lot of chaos, and it does cause a lot of shopping, right? The employee holds all the cards and they're shopping, and they do just as the listener had just said about, like, well, I can just go over here for that much more. But I think what they start to find, and this is where we've been working in the background on this too, is that it's not always about the money, right? I mean, it is certainly attractive, but it does come back to, use a real estate term of location. I'll now use our new hospitality term of culture. But it's not just bringing in donuts, right? It is being present. It's leading by example. It's working shoulder to shoulder with the front line. But it's more than just lip service and those buzzwords, right? Like it as remedial as all of that sounds. It's Hotel 101, managing 101. You actually have to do it. Right. Yeah. And those that are doing it, we see it, right? We see it across the 25 states that we manage properties in. They're winning at the retention game, right? And then the other thing is it is that support piece. And so you see the cyclical nature of burnout, right? And so if you're short staffed and all of a sudden, fast forward, your manager's doing, 5 or 6 different jobs, and then they're going to burn out. So you have to take it up, to the home office level and figure out how we can support the leadership team on the ground, right? And so we've always had a support structure in place that took the administrative burden off the property so that they could manage, and so that the leadership team there could be present, as I mentioned, and servicing the guests and supporting the employees. And while we've had great success with that, we had to rethink it. We had to think, is there more that we could do? And so we did add, as Johnathan mentioned earlier, a number of positions to the home office here. And they're not positions that were the expansion of an existing department, but it was the creation of support people. So a guest service support manager that could be deployed to the field to help with conflict resolution, compassion training. We did similar with our food and beverage support. And then recruiting, that's the other thing, right? So you do have someone who finally submits an application and they hear back from no one because the manager is working the front desk checking people.
Right.
So we've added a layer of support that could at least kickstart the process. Let's screen it, let's whittle it down, let's not waste anyone's time, and then let's get them in front of the people they need to get in front of in order to get them hired. And then we've gone so far as to have a caravan of people go to properties from the drive market to help them turn rooms on them.
That sounds good. I like it. Anthony, then Johnathan, I'd love to hear you comment too.
It's that kind of touch point that's important. We all go to restaurants or stores, and we like to see the owner or the person in charge, right? We've went to how many times have you gone to a restaurant and the owner's not there? That usually comes over to your table and says hello, and you miss something. Like, so if you do that once or twice, it's okay. But if you don't see that owner 4 or 5 times, you maybe stop going to that restaurant. It's the same thing with employees, right? The employee doesn't have to see you every day, but they have to know you're literally a text or a phone call away, and they have to see you a little bit more than periodically. And I think that is what you touched on is so critically important. People don't understand. Yeah, money gets you in the door, but what keeps you in the door is we have a plan for you. I like to say, we offer people a career, we give them a job. right? We've got to what's your plan? Whereas before we can give them their plan every 6 months.
Right.
Now they want to know. I just literally had this conversation with a kid I'm mentoring, and he's and Glenn knows him, and he's very impatient. And he wants to take over the world, and he got a little pissed off at me because I was just like, hey, these are my suggestions or whatever, but he wants to go. What's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? And he'll make it. However he does it, he'll make it. But I think that's what I always say. The guys in your position that have been doing this for a long time are out of touch. And what's really great to hear about your company and you, it's like not only you're not out of touch, it's like you're feeling the pain in you. Most people are detached from the pain that their general managers and even a level above them feel, and you're completely you're completely compassionate and understanding that pain and really doing things to drive that. So I applaud you guys.
Awesome. Johnathan, any comment on the labor thing? Because I got a lot of other things to ask you.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'll bring it back a little bit. I could sit and listen to Matt talk about it all day because we know what it's about. On the revenue side, I can't charge that if we don't have staff. I can't charge that if the general managers run down. So, I mean, we've had multiple meetings where it's like, how do we keep our general managers? We've talked about, we temper occupancy through rates. I'm going to push it, but I may push it hard on a weekend knowing where I can get most. And we may have a target occupancy for a Sunday, Monday to provide a turnover. So like, we're not running rooms or we're not turning rooms. And to Anthony's point about the long-term, we think about that because the awards, our big thing is, you said TripAdvisor. I don't want that value perception to start hitting review sites, hitting Google and hitting TripAdvisor. And then now the reputation we've worked 10 years on building at a hotel is lost because I went $200 too high and we were short on someone because we ran a general manager off because we just didn't stop. So we do try to cross over. Look, I have a heart for that. I love, like I say in hotels, we're playing with widgets on the revenue management side. I don't find it super difficult on what we do with that. But the difficulty now is what are we delivering on the value and the service that we promised? And we do want to make sure of that wholeheartedly.
Anthony, I know you wanted to.
Yeah, I don't believe what you just said because I don't believe. I don't believe what you just said because I don't believe a revenue professional has a heart. I don't believe that.
Look, here, let me add to that. I'll say two things, right? And this is a big initiative of mine. Is our revenue meetings include reviewing reviews, right? So we want to talk about the most recent TripAdvisor reviews. So sentiment analysis is so important, right? Awesome. And if some of that's coming back to value perception, we got a problem in staffing. I mean, during COVID, our revenue people who were good at models, we were doing models on housekeeping levels and what were the best days to support the team. And when we were short on housekeepers, what day we were going to run light, what day we were going to block the occupancy. And then the other days, what were the 5 best days to sell? And then what were the 2 days we could run short? And, it's kind of where we used our cross of skills to support other departments. But yes, there's some hearts out there. I agree with you. Like, I don't mind pushing it. I didn't mind that $1,000.
I'm sure you didn't.
I'm ready to hear it.
Yeah, but Johnathan, what's really interesting to me about all of this is it really tells me about the type of owner that you have. Not only is it great that you have the culture in your company that you don't have to continually go for profit in expense of the long-term health of the business, but that the owners, particularly now, have been as patient and have that long-term understanding. So kudos on that. We're starting to run short on time, so I want to switch topics real quick, Johnathan. Food and beverage is so important. I think it's really quintessentially important, particularly at boutique hotels, especially some of the places you're in where the hotels are more of the centerpiece of town. What Matt said, they wanted that sense of normalcy. How are you thinking about food and beverage? How are you thinking about the customers coming in and the prices they pay to maximize the overall revenue per customer, as opposed to having it completely siloed as traditionally this business has been?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit, definitely Matt's world. But yeah, it is total customer, right? And we just got out of we work in a lot of collegiate markets where those are turning over to the new year, and we're forecasting and budget for the coming year. And it is some thought all the way down to reconcepting and, to Anthony's point, delivering what is required in today's market of where a customer feels comfortable, what they want out of a food and beverage outlet, but also the delivery. Just as much as the labor standpoint, I think we've looked at menu economics and pricing related to the same thing. Where things are shooting up, it feels like every week you'll get an increase on something of where scallops have jumped or where lobster has jumped, and you're having to make that move on the fly. So not to continue with the staffing, I think some of the menu economics, some of the concepting, and some of the delivery. We talked about, I'll give you the example of a coffee shop the other day. We were like, small coffee shop in a town in a collegiate market, where's the tech supporting that? What is the market calling for? Not just from a guest, but where's the market calling for that? And where are you balancing? Do you want a 50-50 mix of guests and in town? Can they do mobile orders? Do we do it fast enough? And in that kind of environment, ticket turn times are going to be important. So really, making sure we have the access to that data and that we're reviewing that, and that, 7 minutes is too slow. We got to get that to 5. And then you start narrowing down to what are the goals to do that? Is it staff? Is it equipment? Is it efficiencies? All of which, Matt's team then employs on the ground, and we get going.
Interesting, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important. I think what's great is that obviously maybe different than a standalone restaurant, we've got, the rhythm and routine that already exists on the room side, right, of monitoring data by the hour, right? And so we kick that into gear on the other side, and maybe it's not by the hour, but it is by the day, right? And we're looking at commodity pricing, and we're looking at the menu mix, and we're looking at supply chain, and we're able to evaluate data very quickly in order to make changes to make sure we remain profitable, or make the changes that we need to make in order to not have to sacrifice on service or impact the guest facing items, right? Or just the hours of operation, or disappoint somebody because it's a shorter hour, because we're having to make up profits. I mean, listen, food and beverage, especially in the portfolio of hotels that we have, connects people with place. It is another amenity. That access to it drives room value, right? We debate all the time, Johnathan and I, how much it actually adds to the room rate. Yeah. It creates this destination, as we all know. And for us, that managed boutique hotels, it's all about branding and telling a story. And F&B is just a continuation of that storytelling, right? And we wouldn't otherwise to be able to deliver that story without it. And for some things, it's also a differentiator. And it comes, if you compare yourself to an Airbnb model, or maybe some of the alternative lodging products, right? That is how the boutique hotel is going to differentiate itself. But now, we learned a lot during the pandemic, and we had to refine carryout as a revenue center, where some did it as an afterthought, or it was sort of the pain of the evening or pain point. They just kind of cut it off when they just didn't want to deal with it. And now it's becoming such a source of revenue, especially those that are in more or adjacent to residential neighborhoods or have some familiarity with the community, that it can't be an afterthought anymore. So now in development, it's so much a part of the conversation, and we're designing spaces to make that function.
That's the title of the show, turning afterthought into opportunity. I think that's what this whole conversation's been about. Johnathan?
Yeah, I was just going to add, made me think, so a lot of what, this COVID did is put us back to basics. And one of the things Matt and I talked about is like managing inventory is back to basics, right? I think a lot, and look, this may be the punishment of the portfolio in secondary and tertiary markets, but you had people who were spoiled with 2, 3, 4 day deliveries. They could just get something the next day when they needed it. And now here you're hearing, well, this purveyor can only make a delivery once a week. And now you're having to be perfect on your inventory to even meet the margins that you were trying to hit. But you also got to be better about, planning ahead and forecasting, which starts with my team and then flows all the way down to F&B. So what does that arrival and departure pattern look like? What does the weather look like? What does the economic, or what does the market look like? What does our local traffic look like? And really going back to, business basics of like managing a restaurant, managing a business. And I think we've put some technology in place to support some of that, but also, it's a re-education of like how important forecasting inventory management is.
Right.
It's receipts too, right? Like we had a successful, success is a blessing and a curse, right? And so we had a successful opening the front in Maine, in Waterville, Maine, which is a restaurant that we have there associated with the Lockwood Hotel, Famille in Westminster, which is at one of our Origin properties, and a number of others that we opened coming out of the pandemic that are the best rated restaurants in their cities. And as a result, everybody wants it, whether they can dine in or not.
Awesome.
And so again, it's sort of that forward thinking of how we're going to design kitchens, how we're going to design doors. Is there a DoorDash pickup? You don't want to impact the hotel side and the guest experience. And so you have to manage all of that. It's difficult to back into an existing operation.
Right, it's funny. It reminds me of the Comac, New York White Castle, which was built in the 70s before drive-through was a thing. And then they had to reconfigure everything to have this machine now that carries your food over because they put in a drive-through. You don't want to make those kind of mistakes out there. We've got to start wrapping up. Anthony, do you have anything else that you want to ask these gentlemen before we let them go for the day? Unmute yourself. All right. Anthony's going to do. Anthony, we cannot hear you. You are muted. But I'm sure. Can anyone here read lips?
He's probably saying how awesome revenue management is and how he appreciates what we charge.
I know. I think so. All right. You're muted. Let me see. All right. Well, there you go. That about says it all right there. Any final words from you, gentlemen, then?
It's just for us, listen, it's an exciting time. It's not for everybody, but I think as we mentioned earlier, we enjoy what we do on a daily basis, and we hope that it shows through our employment practices, and really looking forward to what's in the pipeline and the exciting things that we have lined up for the rest of this year, and hope wishing well for the rest of the industry, that we all sort of figure this out and navigate it and put some calm in the chaos.
Yep, Johnathan.
Yeah, not knowing what the 5-year outlook looks like, and economics looking back and forth, really feeling good about taking advantage and enjoying the time that we're in, seeing demand at its highest, and really embracing what is this travel boom of chasing the independent spirit, the experiential travel that fits our brand so well.
Excellent, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you. We will see you soon. Probably on the road to the next industry event. Thanks so much. Take care, guys. All right, Anthony, that was pretty good.
Bye, guys. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All is good. I think we should probably wrap this up before we mess it up. Now all of a sudden my interface is working weird. I can't see. Hold on. We got to say, do me a favor. Allison wants, it's the kid's birthday. She really loves you. Could you do a shout out to Morgan, Jameson, and Steven for their birthday real quick? They're all 4, 6, and 9.
So who am I shouting out to? Morgan, Jameson? Who am I shouting out to?
And Steven. Mm-hmm.
Well, happy birthday. And hello, is it their birthday? I can't really see. Or just a shout
birthday.
out.
Yes, I know. It's a birthday. Birthday for
you're confusing me. It's their son's birthday. A shout out to your whole family. Happy birthday to your son. And what I love the most is I love when kids are watching the show too. So thank you very much. And thanks for watching our podcast as well.
Yeah, and speaking, if you're watching the podcast, why not listen also? Check us out on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, wherever you download the No Vacancy podcast feed. And if you're listening to us, check us out on video. All right, Anthony, let's get out of here. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
be kind to yourself.
Get some good barbecue while you're at it too. See you all tomorrow.
Please.